The starlet and the secret signal, hey curious minds and day drink philosophers, grab your coffee, or better yet, your Wi-Fi-enabled device. Because today, we're diving into a story so absurdly brilliant it could only have been written by history itself. Imagine this. The reason you can stream cat videos, argue online, or send emails from the toilet, all of it, exists because of a Hollywood actress who looked like a goddess, thought like a genius, and got ignored like a ghost. Her name was Hedy Lamarr, and she didn't just light up movie screens, she rewired the invisible. Literally. Let's rewind. Vienna, 1914. A city of horse-drawn trams, powdered wigs in decline, and a faint smell of pastry and empire. You can hear the ticking of pocket watches and the chatter of coffee houses where men in waistcoats debate politics over sachet. You're in a warm apartment overlooking a cobblestone street. Golden morning light leaks through lace curtains. At the kitchen table sits a little girl named Hedwig Kiesler, 8 years old, curious, and already taking apart the family's music box like she's defusing a bomb. Her father, Emil, leans over with the patience of a saint and the pride of a man who knows his daughter's mind is a spark in a world of oil lamps. "See, Hedy," he says, gently turning the gears. "Everything has rhythm. Even machines have music." She stares, entranced, not at the song, but at the mechanism that makes it happen. Because that's how her brain works. Where most kids hear melody, she hears code. Now, if history were fair, she'd grow up to run a lab. But history, like Wi-Fi, doesn't always connect properly. Fast forward to the 1930s. Austria's uneasy, nationalism's brewing, and our young prodigy has become a walking contradiction, intellect wrapped in perfection. Her eyes can sell a movie ticket. Her mind could build the projector. But back then, women's brains were treated like background noise, always running, never acknowledged. She starts acting, because that's the only kind of engineering a woman's allowed. Emotional. And she's good. So good that by 1933, she stars in a controversial film called Ecstasy, which, let's just say, had scenes that made the Pope reach for holy water. Scandalous, yes, but it makes her famous overnight. And that fame, like most forms of exposure, comes with danger attached. Enter Fritz Mandl, her husband, Austrian arms dealer, charm of a prince, heart of a snake. He's obsessed with her, not in the romantic way, in the ownership way. He shows her off at parties full of generals and inventors, men who design death for a living. She listens, learns. While they brag about weapons guidance and radio controls, she files it all away in that brilliant head of hers. He thinks he's entertaining her. She's studying the mechanics of war. But even a genius has limits, and Hedy's is control. Mandl keeps her under watch like she's one of his prototypes. Bodyguards, locked rooms, gilded prisons. Until one night in 1937, she decides to do what all great innovators eventually do. She breaks the system. Picture it, a marble corridor glowing under chandeliers, guards whispering in the distance. She's in a silk gown, diamonds glinting like Morse code across her wrist. Slips through the hallway, clutching a small bag of jewelry, portable capital. Outside, a train whistle slices through the fog. She doesn't look back. By the time her husband realizes she's gone, Hedy Lamarr, or rather, Hedwig Kiesler, has vanished like a frequency hopping off the dial. She crosses Europe in disguise, trades glamour for grit, and ends up in London tired, broke, brilliant, and free. That's where she meets Louis B. Mayer, the Hollywood mogul with the personality of a champagne cork. He's scouting for new stars. She boards his ship, the SS Normandy, for America, wearing a borrowed dress and a poker face that could win wars. Halfway across the Atlantic, Mayer tells her to smile more. She tells him she'll smile if he doubles her salary. He does. That's how legends are made, by negotiation, not luck. When she lands in New York, she reinvents herself. New name, new accent, new myth. Hedy Lamarr, most beautiful woman in the world. The face that could launch 1,000 cameras, and unbeknownst to anyone, one day launch your Wi-Fi connection too. Hollywood eats her alive and loves her for it. MGM parades her through premieres like a walking painting, perfect, poised, untouchable. But behind the mascara, she's restless. She studies lighting rigs, microphones, and camera mechanisms with the same hunger she once had for that music box in Vienna. Between takes, she sketches circuits on napkins, ideas for faster communication, cleaner sound, better design. Her co-stars gossip. She calculates. Her directors shout action. She's already thinking invention. It's during this golden haze, think Art Deco sets, crystal chandeliers, jazz on the air, that the world starts unraveling again. War is creeping back across Europe like a shadow she escaped but can't outrun. She watches newsreels of bombs falling on cities she once knew. And she can't sit still. She goes to parties full of Hollywood royalty, where everyone's talking about box office numbers, and she's quietly wondering how to stop torpedoes. At one of these parties, she meets a man who speaks her language, not the language of glamour, but of gears. A composer named George Antheil, famous for writing wild, mechanical symphonies where 20-player pianos pound in perfect chaos. A man who, like her, sees rhythm where others see noise. They start talking first about music, then about machines, then about war. And that's when the spark hits. You can almost see it happen. Two misfits, one with movie star cheekbones and the other with a mind like a metronome, connecting over martinis and the impossible idea of saving lives through sound. It's 1941. And as Europe burns, two artists in Beverly Hills are about to invent the future of wireless communication on a dining table covered in sheet music and circuit diagrams. This is the moment before the miracle, the calm before invention's storm. You're in that quiet space where a genius doesn't yet know she's making history, just solving a puzzle because she can't help it. The music box has become a war machine, the melody replaced by frequencies. The little girl from Vienna has turned curiosity into power. You might be sitting right now, phone in hand, Wi-Fi humming invisibly around you, not realizing that your connection, your link to everything started in that moment. Not in a lab, not in Silicon Valley, but in a Beverly Hills living room where an actress and a composer decided that freedom wasn't just political, it was technological. And that, dear listener, is where our story begins. Hollywood, glamour and genius. You wake up in a world made of light bulbs, perfume and ego. Hollywood, 1939. The hills glitter like they've been dusted with money, and the air smells faintly of ambition and cheap champagne. The studios are cathedrals now, each soundstage a shrine to illusion. Inside one of them, under a canopy of blinding spotlights, Hedy Lamarr stands perfectly still, the director shouting, cameras grinding, fans humming like industrial bees. It's the middle of a scene for Lady of the Tropics, but Hedy isn't thinking about her lines. She's watching how the microphone moves. It hangs from a long metal arm, swaying gently like a pendulum, feeding invisible sound to a booth behind glass. Her eyes flicker. She's tracking the mechanics, not the magic. Someone yells, "Cut!" and the crew scurries, but she doesn't move. She's already sketching in her head an idea about wireless signals, about sound that travels without permission. You follow her off set. The corridors smell of powder and cigarette smoke, lined with black and white posters of stars who look perfect because someone told them to be. At the end of the hallway, in her dressing room, Hedy shuts the door and exhales like she's been holding her breath for 10 years. The silence feels earned. She takes off her jewelry, diamonds, borrowed, her wig too tight, and then she does what no one expects from the most beautiful woman in the world. She picks up a mechanical pencil and starts designing. You glance over her shoulder. A page filled with delicate lines, valves, switches, frequency notes, little arrows looping back like ideas in motion. Her vanity mirror reflects both faces, the star and the scientist, split by the glow of a single bulb. Outside, a studio executive knocks, shouting through the door, "Dinner at Saro's tonight, doll." She pretends not to hear. Because for Hedy, the real romance isn't with fame, it's with invention. Hollywood is a role, creativity is her truth. And yet Hollywood has rules. They pay you to look stunning, not to think. She's invited everywhere, premieres, charity galas, parties so over the top they make Versailles look humble. But she doesn't go for the gossip. She goes for the gadgets. At one soiree, she meets Howard Hughes, aviation wunderkind, billionaire with the social grace of a jet engine. He talks about planes. She listens, really listens, then says something that stops him mid-sentence. "Your wings are too square," she tells him. "They fight the air. Look at fish, they move through resistance, not against it." He stares, speechless. A week later, he sends her a set of blueprints and a gift, a portable engineering toolkit. He tells her she can use it to invent anything she likes. So she does. You picture her kitchen counter now covered not in recipes, but in resistors. While other actresses practice lines, she's tinkering with small motors and circuit boards. Neighbors probably think she's eccentric. The truth is, she's ahead of her time, decades ahead. By day, she's the fantasy of millions. By night, she's something no one in that town quite understands. Curious. Her house in Beverly Hills glows like a laboratory disguised as luxury. Blueprints spill off tables, diagrams pinned to the walls beside film posters. She reads books on chemistry, aerodynamics, and radio transmission. Sometimes she calls George Antheil in the middle of the night, rambling about ideas. Imagine, she says, a signal that moves faster than a human can intercept, a kind of musical code like one of your player pianos. He laughs, but not dismissively. He knows genius when he hears it. The world outside is catching fire again. War in Europe. Radio chatter fills the airwaves, and everyone's listening, especially those who shouldn't. German U-boats are sinking Allied ships, jamming torpedo signals. And somewhere in California, a movie star decides she's had enough of passive patriotism. If she can't fight on the front lines, she'll outthink the battlefield. Her nights stretch longer. Cigarette smoke curls above the drafting table like ghosts of sleeplessness. Antheil visits often, lugging boxes of piano rolls, little gears, small motors. He's all chaos and caffeine, she's calm precision. Together they sound like an odd couple in a screwball comedy, except their dialogue is full of physics. You listen as Hedy explains the idea. What if a torpedo and its controller shared a secret rhythm? They'd hop from one frequency to another so fast that no enemy could jam it. Like a duet, only the two of them could hear. Antheil nods, his mind racing with piano keys. 88 frequencies, he says, grinning, like the keys of a piano. And just like that, the melody of Wi-Fi begins. They build small prototypes, not glamorous, not cinematic, just clunky boxes of wires and timing rolls. The neighbors hear clicking through the walls and think she's building a bomb. In a way, she is a bomb against ignorance. Meanwhile, MGM's still churning out films. Hedy's schedule is insane. She goes from rehearsals to experiments, from premieres to patent sketches. In interviews, when journalists ask her about beauty secrets, she smiles and says, "Invention keeps me young." They laugh, thinking it's a metaphor. It isn't. She's become two people now, the woman in the spotlight, and the one behind the curtain building something that will outlive her. You're there one evening, in her living room, watching them work. The lamp flickers green on the table. The air hums faintly with electricity and piano rolls whirring. Antheil adjusts a dial. She traces the signal with her fingertip like a conductor guiding an invisible orchestra. They record the results, whispering about patterns, interference, and code breaking. Outside, Lowe's Angels glitters. Inside, the future's being born in whispers and ink. By August 1942, they file a patent, secret communication system, her legal name on the form, Hedy Lamarr. She doesn't use Lamarr, too famous, too easy to dismiss. The patent is approved, signed, and sent to the US Navy. And then nothing. Weeks pass, months. The silence is deafening. When a letter finally arrives, it's polite but hollow. "Thank you for your submission. The Navy has no current use for this design." Translation: "We don't take science advice from actresses." She's furious. Imagine working out how to stop torpedoes and being told to sell war bonds instead. But she doesn't scream. She channels it. She attends bond rallies, signs autographs, smiles for soldiers, raises millions, all while knowing that the invention that could have saved them sits ignored in a drawer. You can almost see the bitterness form, not sharp, but quiet, the kind that stays under your ribs for years. Still, she believes in her idea. In 1945, when the war ends and the patents expire into the public domain, she lets it go. She doesn't chase credit. She moves on like a frequency skipping to the next note. The next decades will forget her invention, but her signal never stops bouncing. And you're sitting there decades later, Wi-Fi streaming through your walls, Bluetooth syncing your headphones, GPS guiding your drive, all of it humming on the same rhythm she once drew in pencil. The most beautiful woman in the world, the one they dismissed as decoration, turned out to be the architect of the invisible. That's Hedy Lamarr for you, a woman who saw the future in static and turned it into music. The War Machine and the Pianist, You're Back in Beverly Hills, 1941. The radio murmurs headlines about U-boats prowling the Atlantic, the world's rationing hope, and Hedy Lamarr is trying to manufacture some in her living room. George Antheil sits opposite her, chain-smoking over a piano roll. The smell of tobacco mixes with machine oil and the faint perfume of jasmine drifting from her garden. On the table between them, coffee cups, screwdrivers, and a pile of what looks like musical instruments in the process of self-destruction. Anthil taps the table. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" She doesn't answer with words. She pulls a diagram from under a stack of movie scripts and lays it flat. Lines, loops, little notes scribbled in her looping hand. "This," she says, "isn't music, it's timing." He studies the sketch. It looks like sheet music at first glance, a bar of measures, notes in sequence. But it's not melody, it's math. Frequencies mapped like sound. She points to one column. If the transmitter and the receiver jump together, no one can follow. The enemy tries to jam one frequency, we're already gone. He nods slowly, like two pianists playing the same piece but invisible to the audience. "Exactly," she says, grinning. "Only the torpedo hears the song." It's absurd and brilliant all at once, like most great inventions. And it could work. They start testing on paper. He times out shifts with his metronome. She calculates pulse rates with a slide rule. They bicker, laugh, scribble, erase. She's the logic, he's the chaos. Together they find rhythm in the noise. Outside, Los Angeles hums with wartime propaganda. Posters shout buy war bonds, and loose lips sink ships. But inside this small house, another war is being fought against bureaucracy, arrogance, and disbelief. By midnight, their hands are black with graphite and ink. She takes a breath, looks at the blueprints, and murmurs, "You know, George, they'll never take it seriously." He shrugs. "Then we make it so undeniable they can't ignore it." Sunlight spills through the blinds. The city is quiet for once. Even Hollywood sleeps sometimes. Hedy sets a small wooden box on the table. Inside, two tiny motors, a string of gears, and the delicate paper of a player piano roll cut into segments. It hums when she touches it. "This," she says softly, "is our duet." They've built the first crude model of frequency-hopping A transmitter and receiver paired like dance partners, skipping across the spectrum. It's art masquerading as weaponry. She turns the key, and the box begins to click, shifting tones faster than you can count. Anthil listens, eyes wide. "It's actually beautiful," he whispers. She smiles. Everything beautiful starts as noise. The Patent Office, Washington, D.C., 1942. Imagine walking into a government building that smells like paper, ink, and ego. Suits everywhere. No one's smiling. She's dressed impeccably, dark suit, hat, gloves. Anthil beside her in a rumpled jacket, clutching the patent drawings like a life raft. The clerk peers over his spectacles. "Occupation," she hesitates. "Inventor," he blinks. "I beg your pardon." "Inventor," she repeats, voice calm, eyes unblinking. "We're filing a patent for a frequency-hopping communication system." He stares for a beat too long, then stamps the form with a dull thunk. "Patent number 2,292,387. It's official." They leave the building, sunlight bouncing off the marble steps. She laughs for the first time that day, the sound bright, almost triumphant. Anthil grins. "You realize, Hedy, we might have just changed warfare forever." "Let's hope the Navy agrees," she replies, half smiling. Spoiler, they don't. The Navy's response a month later, a letter on crisp government paper. "While innovative, your design is deemed impractical for field use." Translation: "Thank you, dear, but go back to acting." They suggest she use her beauty for morale instead. Maybe she could entertain troops or sell bonds. She reads it twice, folds it neatly, and sets it down without a word. Then she stands, straightens her blouse, and says, "Fine. I'll sell your war bonds." But inside, she's furious. The Bond tour, if you've ever seen propaganda dressed as vaudeville, this is it. Theaters packed, cameras flashing, brass bands blaring. She's on stage, smiling until her cheeks ache, selling Liberty bonds like they're movie tickets. "Buy a bond and kiss Hedy Lamarr," the posters scream. Men line up in droves. She raises millions enough to build entire fleets. But backstage, she sits alone, cigarette glowing in the dark, thinking about her rejected patent. She knows her idea could stop torpedoes. She knows they laughed because of lipstick, not logic. And she knows the world isn't ready for women who invent. The blueprint drawer, the war ends. Anthil goes back to composing. Hedy goes back to filming. The patent expires, forgotten in a government drawer. No credit, no royalty, no mention. Somewhere in the quiet hum of post-war laboratories, engineers rediscover the design. They tweak it, refine it, rename it. By the 1950s, it becomes classified tech, the seed of secure military communication. Her fingerprints remain invisible but indelible, written between the frequencies. Back in Hollywood, she's shooting Samson and Delilah, now biblical epics. lavish costumes, the kind of movie that makes you forget the world ever burned. People call her a comeback queen. They still don't know that the real comeback is humming silently under every radar signal on Earth. At parties, when men brag about science, she nods politely. She stopped correcting them. Sometimes she catches herself staring at a radio, wondering if it's whispering through her design. She doesn't tell anyone. She just smiles, as if in on a secret joke. The irony is cosmic. A woman whose beauty could fill cinemas invented something no one could see. And that invisible thing, the frequency hop, the private conversation between machines, would one day become the heartbeat of the modern world. They told her to entertain the troops. She ended up wiring the planet, and she did it without permission. The secret of the spread spectrum. You're standing in a small government archive in Washington, D.C., somewhere in the late 1940s. The air smells like dust and bureaucracy. You can hear a typewriter clacking in another room, the mechanical heartbeat of the era. Rows of metal filing cabinets stretch to the ceiling, and somewhere between L for Lamarr and M for Markey sits the future. A clerk yawns, flips through a drawer, and stamps another file with a red label, expired patent. The drawer shuts. The sound it makes is almost final, like a door closing on genius. Hedy doesn't know it yet, but her idea hasn't died. It's just gone underground, buried in paperwork, waiting for a world clever enough to catch up. You're walking through the same corridors now, decades later in your imagination, watching the invisible trail begin to hum. Because history has a strange habit of resurrecting what it forgets. The invisible revolution cut to a military lab, mid-1950s. Uniforms everywhere, the smell of ozone and ambition. Engineers lean over machines that buzz and click, the air filled with the sound of progress and caffeine. "Gentlemen," one says, "we've got interference again. Enemy jamming's killing our signal." Another, younger engineer, the kind who reads everything, even the footnotes, flips open a file labeled Secret Communication System. "Ever heard of this?" he asks. The older man squints. "What's that? A radio manual. Patent. 1942. Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil." The room goes silent for a beat. Someone laughs. "The actress," he shrugs. "Yeah, but it might just work." And so quietly, invisibly, the impractical idea gets tested again, not in Hollywood this time, but in hidden labs, the kind with no windows and too many coffee mugs. They don't call it frequency hopping anymore. They call it spread spectrum. And suddenly, what was once a cute piano trick becomes the holy grail of secure communication. By the time Sputnik blinks across the night sky in 1957, the world is addicted to radio. Military satellites, radar, early data systems, all of it depends on clean frequencies. And clean frequencies need one thing above all: protection from noise. That's where she lives now, in the code, in the hum, in the invisible dance of signals skipping across space. Back in Beverly Hills, meanwhile, Hedy Lamarr's still alive, just not glowing like before. The spotlight's dimmed. The studios want younger faces. The tabloids want scandal. She gives them neither. Her house is quieter now. She tinkers still, of course. Old habits die harder than fame. You find her sitting at a workbench surrounded by spare parts, a disassembled radio, a magnifying glass, a pile of notes that look suspiciously like the early sketches of Wi-Fi modems. She listens to the static, tilts her head like she's hearing something no one else can. The sound of frequencies shifting, maybe. The ghost of her own invention. In a drawer somewhere nearby sits her original patent copy, yellowed, fragile yet timeless. Every so often, she takes it out, runs her fingers along the seal, and smiles like someone who knows a secret no one else does. She doesn't need recognition anymore. She has proof. Her fingerprints are in the signal. The echo through time. The 1960s arrive with moon rockets, satellites, and Cold War paranoia. Governments pour billions into communication tech, all of it balancing on that same foundation she built with Antheil's piano rolls. By the 1970s, spread spectrum becomes military gospel. Then something beautiful happens. The technology escapes, not through espionage or theft, but through curiosity. Scientists at universities start adapting it for civilian use: radio links, secure teletypes, the early whispers of what will become the internet. They never say her name. Not because they're malicious, because history's memory has a terrible filing system. But if you could listen closely between the frequencies, you'd hear it. Herhitham still alive in every transmission. You're there in 1970, picture it, a smoky conference room in Palo Alto. Men in turtlenecks and mustaches passing blueprints like trading cards. On a whiteboard, new data transmission protocols. Someone mutters about frequency agility, another scribbles waveforms. They're reinventing what she invented. One of them points at the diagram. We can send multiple signals without interference if we hop between channels, spread the spectrum. Heads nod, pens scribble. Nobody mentions the actress from the 40s, but she's there in every pencil mark, every line of code, every hum of the machines they build. By the 1980s, the world's become a forest of invisible chatter. Cordless phones, radio modems, satellite feeds. Everything's whispering through the same spectrum she once dreamed of protecting. And through it all, her invisible melody continues the duet she wrote for war, now playing in peace. You pull your phone out of your pocket right now. Look at it. That glowing slab of glass and circuitry is her ghost. Bluetooth, that's her. Wi-Fi, that's her too. Every hop, every handshake, every connection born from her mind, scribbled in pencil in 1941. The irony's delicious, isn't it? She wanted to stop torpedoes. She ended up creating the architecture for the internet. And yet, for half a century, no one thanked her. Not the Navy, not the labs, not the corporations that made billions off a principle she'd written down on paper while everyone else was drinking martinis at Ciro's. But time, like radio waves, has a funny way of circling back. It's the 1980s. A journalist digging through obscure patents finds her name. He stares at it for a moment, the absurdity, the poetry of it. Hedy Lamarr. Could it really be her? He writes a small piece about it in a technology journal, the kind that sits unread on dusty shelves until a graduate student finds it and posts it on a primitive message board. And suddenly, the whisper grows. Did you know the woman who invented Wi-Fi was a movie star? The sentence spreads like wildfire. Finally, the world starts listening. Hedy doesn't see herself as a hero. When reporters call, she shrugs. I didn't know it would matter, I just wanted to help. But you can hear the satisfaction in her voice. Decades of silence cracked open by a single truth. She was right all along. Her invention didn't just survive, it became the skeleton of the digital age. Every call, every satellite, every connection, all descendants of her signal. You're back in her Florida home. The sun is setting, the sky the color of copper and nostalgia. On her desk, there's a small transistor radio playing faintly some talk show about technology, about the age of connectivity. She listens, smiles faintly and whispers, "Took them long enough." Outside, a neighbor's kid walks past wearing a Sony Walkman. The tape clicks, switches channels. Somewhere, frequencies hop in perfect rhythm. And there it is again, the invisible duet between art and science, beauty and brilliance, the most human sound of all, invention being heard at last. You're in the 1950s now, the dawn of television, chrome and quiet despair. America's selling dreams again, this time in color. Everything shines on the surface, cars, smiles, cities. But under that polished hum of refrigerators and atomic optimism, something still flickers in the static. Her name's faded from the headlines, her face from the posters. Hedy Lamarr, once the goddess of the silver screen, now walks through department stores, and no one recognizes her. The girl who could stop traffic can't even get a studio callback. It's not tragedy, it's evolution. The world's moved on, but she's still trying to move it further. In her small Florida home, she's soldering again. The neighbors call her eccentric. They don't see the schematics pinned to the wall, new designs, new ideas, each one another try at understanding the invisible. She doesn't need a laboratory. Her mind is one. You can hear the buzz of possibility even when the radio's off. Sometimes she catches snippets of military reports, encrypted transmissions, satellite tests, radar updates, and smiles to herself. She knows. They're using her work. Her signature is buried deep inside the code, hidden like a watermark only she can recognize. It's poetic justice of the best kind, the classified variety. They may have buried her name, but they can't erase her design. It's 1962. A defense engineer opens a file stamped secret. Inside, schematics nearly identical to hers. No mention of Lamarr, no mention of Anthil, just a government seal and the words "Adapted Communication System Secure Channel Transfer." He frowns. "Looks familiar," he says to a colleague. "It should," the other replies, smirking. "It's been in our archives for 20 years. They've rebranded it, refined it, militarized it, and now it's classified beyond recognition." Hedy's frequency hopping system, the heart of her patent, has become a nervous system of global defense. Missile guidance, encrypted channels, deep space telemetry. Every beat of modern communication pulses with her rhythm, and not a single headline gives her credit. Back in Florida, she's reading tabloids about starlets half her age. They ask her about love affairs, not logarithms. She answers politely, but her eyes are far away, tuned to a different frequency altogether. She isn't bitter, she's just realistic. She's learned what happens when brilliance meets patriarchy. It gets rebranded. The 1970s arrive in bell-bottoms and bad decisions. Hollywood remembers her just long enough for nostalgia documentaries. Scientists rediscover her just long enough to footnote her. And still, she tinkers. In her notebook's faded ink, looping script, she writes about wireless communication, distributed frequencies, shared codes. She doesn't call it Wi-Fi. She just calls it inevitable. Meanwhile, the world's catching up without realizing it. NASA's deep space transmitters, Pentagon satellites, Cold War submarines, all running on derivatives of her original principle. Every transmission, a quiet salute to the woman who dared to play symphonies on the radio spectrum. In 1974, a journalist phones her for an interview. She laughs when he asks about the patent. "Oh, that old thing," she says. "It was just an idea. Ideas are easy. The world makes them complicated." She doesn't say it with arrogance. She says it like a magician tired of explaining the trick. By the 1980s, something shifts. Personal computers hum in living rooms, cordless phones chatter, satellites blink like stars, and her name, long silent, begins to echo again. It starts as rumor, then becomes revelation. Tech magazines run the headline. Hollywood beauty invented the basis of Wi-Fi. The world blinks, stunned. The scientists look sheepish. The historians scramble, and the myth is reborn not as scandal but as genius rediscovered. She's amused mostly. When asked how she feels, she says, "Well, the boys finally caught up." Her phone rings again, not for film offers but for interviews. She gives a few, then retreats back into her quiet. Recognition tastes sweet, but solitude's still her favorite flavor. When the Electronic Frontier Foundation calls in 1997 to give her the Pioneer Award, she almost says no. Then she reconsiders, not out of pride, out of principle. She knows what it means for women in science to see her honored at last. So she sends a simple recorded message. It's about time. 2 words, perfectly measured. A lifetime distilled into a sentence. You're there in that moment, the applause thunderous, the lights warm. The engineers, the technologists, the dreamers, all standing, cheering, realizing that every signal their devices ever sent owes a whisper of itself to her. She's not on the stage. She's not even in the room, but she's everywhere. In the routers, the satellites, the phones, the orbiting hum of modern life. The frequency she once built to hide signals is now the pulse that connects billions. Hedy Lamarr doesn't need statues or awards. She has something far better. Immortality encoded in Wi-Fi packets and Bluetooth pairings. When your phone buzzes, when your laptop connects, when your car's GPS politely insists you've missed the turn, that's her ghost in the machine, still dancing between frequencies, perfectly in sync, perfectly unseen. In January 2000, she dies quietly in Florida. No red carpet, no fanfare, just a quiet apartment filled with light and the faint smell of salt air. Her obituary calls her a film star. A few paragraphs down, almost as an afterthought. She also held a patent for a frequency-hopping communication system. You close the paper. It's understated, but fitting. After all, her genius was never loud. It was a whisper that changed the world. Outside, the 21st century begins to bloom glowing screens, invisible networks, the constant chatter of connected lives. The same thing she once imagined in static now hums in every home. No marble monument can compete with that. She doesn't need one. She is one. Invisible, wireless, eternal. So here's the takeaway, friend, because every good history lesson comes with a moral. The next time your Wi-Fi drops and you curse at the signal, take a breath and think of her. Think of the woman who stared at static until she saw possibility. The actress Horf used to be decoration. The inventor whose blueprint outlived empires. Hedy Lamarr didn't just imagine connection, she created it. And the rest of us, we're still catching up to her signal. The Nifty historian. So, what did we learn, dear time traveler? That brilliance doesn't always come wearing a lab coat. Sometimes it wears eyeliner, dodges typecasting, and files a patent between movie shoots. Hedy Lamarr didn't just dream of connection, she built it. Her invention survived war, ignorance, and time itself to become the heartbeat of the 21st century. The next time your Wi-Fi drops, take a breath and thank the woman who made it possible to complain about bad Wi-Fi in the first place. She proved that beauty fades, fame flickers, but ideas, the good ones, never stop transmitting. Until next time, keep chasing the weird and the wonderful. This has been the Nifty Historian.